Okay, geweldig. We are right on the top of Daf Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, and we were in the middle of discussing the chal that's cooked, how it has to be prepared. And we had several different options. We had the option of having to cut it chassis horizontal and vertical and squeeze the milk out. We had a shita that you just have to cut it. Then we had a shita where you just have to roast it. You don't have to cut it at all. But Rashi did say that for cooking, you need to cut it shesiv erev, because if you cook it, then milk will leave it and go back inside. But by roasting it, the milk will just drain out. So Zok the Gemara, Gisalak Rabbi Lazar, when Rabbi Lazar went up there to Israel, Ashkechei l'zeir. He met Zeir. Amalei, he asked, Ikatana, Dasyanya, Rav Kal. Rav holds, Zok Rashi, Yesh kan misha shana l'Rav Kal shabishloi b'loi kriya also b'achila. Is there a shita? Did Rav say that if you eat chal without cutting it up, it's going to be also? And we're not. He wasn't asking if Rav says that. He knows Rav said it. Who told us the Rav? Who taught Rav that the chal shabishloi b'loi kriya would be also b'achila? So he asked that question. Who taught this to Rav? Amali ikatanya the Sanya Rav Kal, Achlia Rav Yitzchak Bar Avudima. So they sort of pointed to Rav Yitzchak Bar Avudima. He was the one who taught this to Rav. And Toshvis has a little bit of the discussion who this Rav Yitzchak Bar Avudima was. It seems like he was also in the days of Rava. And the question would be, how could he have been Rav's Rebbe if he was by Rava's time? So it was much, much later. So Taisha suggests could be there are two Rav Yitzchak's Bar Avudim. Amr Lay, so when Zeiri asked, so Rabbi Lazar asked, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Avudimai, you were the one who taught Rav that Chal Shabishlai is Osir? Amr Lay, no. Ani Lay Shanisa Chal Kalikar. I never taught him any Isser about Chal. Zot Rashi claim Shum Chal Lo Shanisa Lo Isser. Bein Chal Manika ubein Chal She'ena Manika. So now Rashi just introduced a new idea that there might be a difference between the chal of a animal that's nursing. Naturally, it's going to have more milk in it. That's when the animal produces milk, versus a regular chal. I didn't say anything about chal at all. The Rav just said that chal is also. Where did Rav get it from? The Rav bika motza v'goder b'geder. He saw a breach in Klal Yisrael, and therefore he had to put in an extra chumrah to close the breach. What was the breach that Rav saw? The Rav ikloi the Tatlafush, which was the name of a city, and Shama lahi itza, he heard a woman talking with her friend, and she asked her friend to follow with question. The Kamal Chaverta, Riva de Bisra, Kama Chalba boy levishula. How much milk do I need to cook properly a litra of basar? Which means they didn't even know about the idea about the Isra Basar B'chala. So when he saw in the city that they knew nothing about Basar B'chala, Amar Loi Gemiri, the Basar B'chala Basar, they didn't even know, they were so ill-informed, they didn't even know that Basar B'chala is Asr. So therefore, he had to make a katakana. He remained there, because also little kat. And he says you're not allowed to eat chal at all. No chal is allowed to eat. I assume he explained them the Isser Basar B'chala, and he even said that chal would be Asr, which we know would not necessarily be Asr. But he wanted to make it very severe. And that's what it was all about. Not because Me'ikr he held that there was an Isser of the milk being nivla, the meat, and vice versa. Rav Kahana Masnah, this is how Rav Kahana understood the story. But Rabbi Yosy bar Abba Masni, Rabbi Yosy bar Abba was a different story. He said, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimah said, Anok chal shalmanika shenisaloi. I did teach him lahalacha that the chal of a manika is in fact osir because there's a lot of milk, which is what I meant to teach him. However, umi pilpule shel Rab Chia, vibalt Rab Chia, who was the direct Rebbe of Rabbi Yitzchak, he was the one who said over this halacha that I taught that the chal of a manika is osir. But Rab Chia was a very sharp yid, and he figured out that avada, there's no havamina to answer a regular cow where there's no milk in it. The only thing we could be talking about is a kal shalmanika. And therefore, Vibalt Pkia thought it was obvious that that's what it's referring to because of his analytical mind. He taught Stam, Shana le Chal Stam. He taught Rav Chal Stam is Osir because he took it for granted that Rav would figure out that it's only the Chal of a Manika. But Rav didn't. And Rav, in fact, thought that he was taught by his Rebbe Reb Chia that Chal Stam is Osir. But it's really not true. It's only the Chal of a Manika. So there's a Shaila here in the two Lashonos. Did Rav Aser all Chals? Or is really only the Chal of a Manika Asura? It's just that Rav misunderstood Rav. Ravin Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Ikloi Lubei Rav Papa. They showed up once to be hosted by Rav Papa. By Rav Papi, by Rav Papi. Aisu lekamayu tafshila dekal. They were brought a tafshil of kal, cooked kal. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef achal, he ate. Ravin lo yach. Ravin wouldn't eat. Amar Abaye. Abaye told Ravin, Ravin Tichla, Ravin, the Yid who Rachman al-Islam has lost his children. Now, if someone is addressing, if Abaye is addressing Ravin in somewhat a stern type of address, it must be he held he did the wrong thing. And he asked, Ravin Tichla, achal midi, why wouldn't you have eaten? Is the hechsher here not good enough for you? The visitor of Papi, who prepared the food? The wife of her Papi. Do you know who she is? She is Barte Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. She's the daughter of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, and everybody knows Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Morid Uvda. He was a major Yerei Shemayim, Zora b'Maisim, as Rashi says. And obviously, what she did, she saw at home. And if that's what came from Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha's home, who are you to say I'm not going to eat it? Zok to Gemara, this was all told you in a minute. It was all told in a minute. Ilav the Shmiel of Benoshi, Benoshi lo have avda. Dr. Gemara, Besura lo achlik. In Surah, the minig was not to eat chal. They followed the teachings of Rav. They did not eat chal. That was cooked. But the Pumbedisa, achlik chal. In Pumbedisa, they ate chal. So the reason why Rav didn't eat is because he was following the minig of Pumbedisa. Now we have a very interesting story. Rami bar Tamari, to who? Rami bar Dikuli. So Rami had two names, bar Tamari. Tamari is a date tree. And bar Dikuli, which is also a palm tree, a date palm tree. So I'm not sure the distinction of the two names. Mi Pumbedisa. He was from Pumbedisa, where eating a kachal was allowed. And Ikla Lasura, he once showed up to the city of Surah, B'mali Yoyme de Kippure, on the Erev Yom Kippur. In Surah, they didn't eat kal. Now, everybody had a Suda on Erev Yom Kippur, so they all shechted animals. And they all threw the kal out, because in their city, the minig was not to eat the kal. Afkinu kula alma l'kchalinu. Shedinu, they threw it out. Ozal iyu, so Rami Bar Tamri, who was from Pumbedisa, where they ate the kal, he went and gathered them all up. Natinu achlisinu achlinu. So when the people in the city saw that this yid was eating from what in their experience was also to eat, they took him to the dying. How could you do such a thing? Amar Lei, so Pista asked Rami particularly, Amai Tamarochi, why would you do this? Amar Lei, me Asher Rav Yehuda Anu. I come from the city of Rabbi Yehuda. The Achel, and our minig is to eat the Kchal. Amar Lei, V'leslach noisna lov Chumer Amokim Shiyotze Misham, Chumer Amokim Shalach L'Sham. Don't you hold of the halacha that whenever you go from one city to the next, you have to retain your chumras. But if there's any chumras that are in the city that you go to, you have to accept upon yourself those chumras as well. So, out of respect for Surah, you shouldn't have been eating these chal. Amalei told the Chisda, with all due respect, I was not in the city. Chutz l'tchum achlesinu. I ate them out of the tchum, so I'm not within yet the zone, the range where I have to subscribe to the isser of eating chal. So Rav Chisda said, okay, fine. But how did you roast this? How did you roast? How did you prepare this chal? So he said, Amar Lei b'portzani. I found discarded grape seeds that were near the wine presses. So Rav Chisda says, how could you be so sure that was allowed? V'dilma miyayin nesach. Maybe these seeds were from yayin nesach, and they're also bano. Amar Lei la'achesh nei mosach chodesha. The seeds were very dried out. When they're very dried out, that's a sign that they're already at least 12 months old. Now, the loch is seeds that are moist with yayin nesach, they're also bana. But once the seeds dry out and there's no moisture left, there's no problem of yayin nesach on these seeds. So I wasn't worried about yayin nesach. The dilma de gezelam. How do you know that they were garbage? Maybe they were piled there by the owner who wanted to use it himself as firewood. Amar Lei, Yush Bailam Hava. I know for sure the Bailam were miyayish, or meaning they were mafkedem. How do I know? The kadchuvahu filthy. There was already weeds growing out of these seeds. So it's like if you go on an old roof, sometimes there's so much growth on the roof itself, you could have little plants growing right out of the roof. If these seeds were so deteriorated to the point that there's growth growing out of them, for sure the Bailam were miyai. Taja, they saw the lay of them on tefillin. They saw that this Rami Bar Tekula wasn't wearing tefillin. Omer, they asked him, or Rav Chisda asked him, "My time alay matchas tefillin. Why aren't you wearing tefillin?" Omer, chayli me'ayin. I have an upset stomach. I'm not allowed to be wearing tefillin now. Rabbi Yehuda, chayli me'ayin pater min tefillin. Chaja deloy have a karami chuti. They saw he wasn't wearing tzitzis. Amar lei, my time alach chuti. Why don't you have tzitzis? This is not my beggar, it's borrowed. Rabbi Yehuda. Before we turn, okay, we'll turn over. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda said, turning on to Amud Beis. Shula, oops. That's a say. Talis She'ula Kol Shloshim Yom for 30 days, Patur Tzitzis. So let's stop here for a second. The article brings down from somebody who asks, I don't understand. A Yid comes into a city, Rami Bar Tekuli. He's very poor. He can't even afford clothing. He's borrowing clothing. What would be so bad if he knocked on one of the doors in the city and said, I'm an Oni V'Avir and I don't even have what to eat. Can you give me a little bit of food to eat before the fast? I'm sure on Erev Kippur, where people are looking for shlusim, there would be lines to feed him. So the Arshro brings down from somebody, you see from here an important lesson, that better you should live with nothing at all and have to scrounge around for food than have to come on Labrius, while you start Labrius. So the Lashon Gemara somewhere is, it's better that a Talmud Chacham should be stripping the Velachs in the Shuk, meaning he should be Isaac and Parnasa, even though it's not exactly a respectable, honorable Parnasa, you're dealing with carcasses of dead animals, Ba'al Yitztarech Labrius. So Rabbi Kula said, whatever degrading thing I have to do, but be able to remain independent, that's what I'm doing. Zok to Gemara, Adahachi, during this whole back and forth, they brought another fellow into best. Aisrael Higavra, the law of a Mukar Avu Ve'ime. He wasn't being Mekayim, Kibbut Aveim, and Kavsu, which Rashi says they tied him to a post because that's how they would prepare somebody to get Malchus. Now, why was he getting Malchus? Zokt Rashi, where is it that you only get 40 Malchus? The Avera was done already. Now you're getting Malchus for doing the Avera. But if somebody has a mitzvah to do, regarding, for instance, build a sukkah, he refuses to. I say lulav, so they were going to be punishing him to do this mitzvah of keep it up that he refused to do. Amar Lohu, Rami Bar Dekula said, Shavku, leave him, you have no right to punish him. The Tanya we learned, Kol mitzvah sasei, Shematan schara betzida, ein bezdin shalomata musar nalev. Kibbut Aveim has matan schar betzida l'man yerichin yomecha, halo adama. So once the Torah itemizes what a schar is, then the oynish is that if you don't do the mitzvah, you don't get that schar. But you have no right, there's no din of enforcing something like that b'dei adam. As Rashi says, Shemat and schara betzida l'man yarich yamecha lekach pirish matan schara. The reason why the Torah spoke out the schar is to tell us something important. Loymar im loyse kamenu zel loincha shlatita schar zeh. The oynish is limited to not being zoichet to that special schar that the Torah allots to someone who does this mitzvah. So Tosh was asked, it says Lamichin Yumecha by tzedakah as well, yet you force people to give tzedakah. And it's a one-line Toshvis. Kol mitzvahs hasei shemat n'schor b'mtoim davar tzedakah d'ksiv pasech tiftach es yodecha ki biglal adavar hazeh yivarechecha and garmin b'perkamid b'basra the Rava achafia l'Rav Nosson bar Ami v'apik minei arba mei zuz l'tzedakah. He forced Rav Nosson bar Ami to give 400 zuz. That maybe the kfir there wasn't giving him malchus like we're discussing over here, which you're not going to do for a mitzvah that's a matan schar b'tzida. All that means is that they pressured him. Hainu b'dvorim k'da'ashpon perchnayir v'ksubis achafya. The all. So kfir doesn't necessarily mean the kfir that Argamor says you're not allowed to do. By physically hitting him, it merely means speaking to him, putting on pressure. That's you're allowed to do. There's also two lavin, so there might be justification to force it. Okay, so what happened? Omar light. So Reb Chisda saw that he wasn't dealing with a lightweight. Rami Bar Dekula was a Talmud Chacham. Chazinalach the Chavri Fastuva. I see you're a sharp guy. Omar light. Rami Bar Dekula responded, "Ihabis Basrei Rabbi Yehuda. If we were now in the city of Rabbi Yehuda, who, by the way, was not to him to eat the chal, I'd be able to show you a lot more. In other words, you ain't seen nothing yet. I could offer much more insights if I was in the city of my Rebbe. I'm not sure how being in the city of Rabbi Yehuda would have revealed more charifus, but that's what he says. Toishvis, as you can see, there's a long Toishvis here, has a discussion about someone who is wearing a talis shula more than 30 days. There he is mechuyev taftitzes. Zog Toisvis, that's not Midaraisa, it's still not Kesuscha, but in Midarabanan, Zog Toisvis on the third line, Elalafisha nearest Kishaloi, since he's wearing it already for more than 30 days, which means it looks like it's his shirt, it doesn't look like it's borrowed. Therefore, Chayvu Chachamim Mishloishim Yoim Ve'elech, they directly show Yosy Mishloishim Yoim. Midarabanan, you'd be mechuyev to wear tzitzis if it was more than 30 days. So, to become normally when you borrow something, it's expected that you could keep it for up to 30 days. And therefore, we learn in the Gemara Makkos, not by she'ela, but by halva. If you lend somebody money, you have to let him have the money at least for 30 days. So Tosfos has a discussion about that. But there's a very interesting Tosfos as a shaila. If you're only mechuyev to wear these tzitzis midrabana, would there be a chiyuv bracha? So Tosfos a couple of lines later says, "In bracha nira she'ein levarach ala she'ul." You don't make a bracha. Avabi she'omer Rabbeinu Tam, the noshim mevarches asukah aval gav dipeturas. Even though women do make a bracha on mitzvahs that they do, even though they're potter, because mitzvah sukkah is a mitzvah to say shazman grama, and even by any mitzvah voice you're allowed to make a bracha. And we also found Rabbi Yosef, who was blind, and he said, "Man da Omar li, halachic Rabbi Yehuda, da Omar suma potter in the mitzvahs, avidna yoyma tavel rabbanon." Rabbi Yosef said, at first he said, he changed his mind, but at first he said, if anybody would tell me that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda that suma potem in mitzvahs, and I'm doing the mitzvahs lefnim shur sadin because he was blind and he did the mitzvahs anyway. So someone who passes like that gives Rabbi Yosef a greater schus. So avidna yom tavel rabbanon, I'd make a yom tiv. Why? I'm making a party for you. Why? Because you're giving me more schus than me. You're making me an any mitzvah, but I'm a nice anyway. It's inconceivable, so Tosfos. It's inconceivable that Rabbi Yosef would have been happy being an Ein Mitzvah V'Oisa if that would have barred him from making the brachas. So it must be that an Ein Mitzvah V'Oisa does make brachas. Nevertheless, Tosfos, by a Talis She'ula, where you're only mechuyev to put on tzitzis midrabanan, there you would not make a bracha. Why? Tahasum Adam Acher Hayachayiv Jainasuma. By Rabbi Yosef, anybody else that's not a blind person would be mechuyev in these mitzvahs. Those mitzvahs that anybody in this circumstance would be mechuyev in, there you can make a bracha. Or Sheina Isha, or if you're not a woman, you're mechuyev in these brachas. Avalacha by She'ula, Kol Adam Potter. Everybody's potter from tzitzis on the Talis She'ula. So therefore, there's no chiyuv to make a bracha. Zok Tosfos, even though you're not mechuyev to make a bracha, you're still allowed to make a bracha. So that's Tosfos' discussion about making a bracha on something that you're not mechuyev. Tosfos clearly says, even though you're not mechuyev in making the bracha, you're definitely allowed to make the bracha. Then Tosfos has a whole discussion about klayim. The Kohanim made a bracha on tzitzis, even though it was klayim, because they were allowed to wear klayim. There's all discussion in Tosfos, were they allowed to wear their big kahuna even shaloi b'shas avoda because it was klayim. So Tosfos says once they're allowed to wear them, they're allowed to wear them. So it's just a little bit of an interesting discussion. Okay, let's see the Gemara Vayter. Amar le Abai le Reb Safra. Abai told Reb Safra, Ki salkas lahosam, when you go up there to Yisrael, boy minayu, I want you to ask them the following question. Kveda, a liver, which we know is fully soaked with blood, ma'atun bey. What do you hold about the liver? Rashi explains, why is there a shaila? Kveda ma'atun hagim boy. What is your meaning? Muta levashal b'teira? Are you allowed to cook it in the pot? Oy osir. Or is it also to cook? Why would it be osir? Because it excretes blood. Even though the liver is kulei dam, and the Torah says you're allowed to eat liver. So obviously you're allowed to eat the dam of the liver when you're eating the liver. But the problem is, la'aka shapirish, if you cook it, the blood's going to leave the liver. The yotza hareyu dam, then it will be dam that the Torah was not matir, and it will be usher. So he wanted to know, what did they do about livers? There's actually a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Tosfos learns this is speaking about a liver that was already pre-salted. But Tosfos learns it, but Rashi learns it's speaking about a liver. Rashi mentions nothing about salt. So speaking about a liver that was not salt. He's met Reb Zrika. Omer and Reb Zrika said, Ana shalki Rab Ami, I cooked it for Rab Ami, and he ate it. Which means it would be mutter to eat. So Kiyasa the Gabe, when he got back, it says so when Reb Safra got back to Abaye, gets back to Chutz La'aretz, he reported to him, and he said, Amar Le, Abaye asked him, L'meiser nafsha loikam eboyim. That was never my shaila, that the liver itself will not become osir when you cook it, because the liver is being pilot. While it's being pilot, it will not be boiled. That was not my question. I wanted to know that if you cook a piece of meat in the same pot as the liver, will the blood that come out of the liver, will it answer the meat or not? Why would be the reason that it would? Very simply, it's being blood being cooked. The reason why it wouldn't be ulcer is because maybe the blood that comes from the liver never will become ulcer even after it leaves the liver. If the Torah was matir liver, that means all the blood inside the liver, the Torah is being matir. Therefore, even when it leaves the liver, maybe it wouldn't ulcer a piece of meat that absorbed that specific dam. And that was the shaila that Abaye wanted to do. Zok to Gemara. So Reb Zrika asked him, sorry, not Reb Zrika, who was the person who went up? Reb Safra. So Reb Safra asked Abaye, I don't understand. You seem to be very sure that the liver itself that was cooked you're allowed to eat. How could you be so sure? You must have known this Mishnah. And if you knew this Mishnah, then you should also obviously know that it would answer meat that you cooked with it. So he asked him, you're clear that the liver itself isn't usher because you must have seen the Mishnah. It's not einon aseres. So if you know this Mishnah, then you should also know the Mishnah also says hakave the liver or seres, it can answer something else that you cook with it, but in there seres, but it itself will not become usher. Because it's pilot, it's giving off dam, it's not going to be absorbing dam. So therefore, I don't understand Abaye how you could have a shot. Amar Le, Abaye said, because I don't learn shot in the Bryce of Kaveh that you just quoted, that the question is about the dam. No, I'm referring to a Kaveh from an Avela. Dilma Hazlam bekveded the Isura, or Rashi's of a treifa. We have a Kaveh of a treifa, and the question is, if you cook the Kaveh of a treifa together with another piece of meat, that's where the Mishnah says it will aser that piece of meat because it's going to be giving off tam of treifa. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. My question is, if it's not aser, if it's just the dam in it, that was my question. So in fact, you think I asked a dam question, but in fact I asked a smart question. And you don't have a raya from the Mishnah to answer my shayla. When Mishum Shamni Nusa, that was the reason why the Mishnah is aser. But Mishum Dama Mai, what if it's only a question of the dam in the cup? Let's see Rashi. Mishum Shamnunis Ka'amar the Oiseres es Hamabashal Ima. Why? Lefisha Boileam in a treifa. Because the meat that you're cooking with the liver of a treifa is being boilea tam from the treifa. The Einin Aseres im shel heter. If it was a liver that was mutter, maybe it wouldn't be the problem. So maybe I'm sorry. Maybe if you have meat that was from a kosher animal, ubishla im treifa, and you cooked it with the liver of a treifa, ain't in the seris. Maybe it wouldn't be aser, but we should true the lifloid kol shah because it's being poiled the whole time. The ain't by last klum. So if you cooked a kosher liver with a piece of treifa meat, your kosher liver wouldn't become usher because it wouldn't be by leia any of the time of the treifa because it's being poiled. Avoldama the nafik mino dikshera miboyali. But my question is the blood that comes out of a kshera. That's what I want to know. Aser achrini iloi if it would aser something else or not. So the Mishnah is talking about either a treifa liver that was cooked with a piece of meat, there it's aser, or a kosher liver that was cooked with a treifa meat, which would also be mutter because the liver won't be by leia. But I'm discussing a completely different subject, a kosher liver, kosher meat, and dam is leaving the liver. And the question is, will the dam from the liver aser the piece of meat that's cooked with it? Eloi. The Ikal Meimar, there's a tzad to say, dama de teru. Any dam from within the liver is dam of heter. The Torah was matter. Shari ikra dam. The whole liver is dam. And we know the chosman shalai pirish pshitali the mutter. We know that dam that stayed in the liver would be mutter. So that's dam that's identified as dam that's mutter. My shaila is v'chipirish miboyelima. And my whole question was, if this dam should leave the liver like it's been cooked in a pot, will the dam now become aser and aser the meat? Again, this is only a shaila of the rabbanon because dam shabishloi we know is no longer aser d'oraisa. My he hodar salak. So when Reb Safra went up the next time to Eretz Yisrael, he asked Reb Zrika, Omerlei, and he told him back, you shouldn't even clear about that either. That's also pashut. Why? Tano, the Yanai Bereder Avami, myself and Yanai, the son of Avami, Iklon Lebei Rabbi Yehuda, Lebei Yehuda Bereder Rabbi Shimon ben Pasi. We showed up to the house of Yehuda, who was the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Pasi, the Karivu Lon, and he fed us to eat Kani Bechufya, the entire section of organs that are connected to a kana. So the kana goes down into the lungs, and from the lungs there's arteries that go to the heart and to the liver. So we cook together the kana with the lungs, with the heart, with the liver. Now we ate it. So you see clearly that the dam from the liver will not aser the dam, will not aser the meat of the heart, and will not aser the meat of the lungs. So you see clearly that the dam won't aser. Zok to Gemara, what is the raya? Maskeflor Rab Ashi v'Tamer Rab Shmuel mizrunaik mizrukinya v'lilma pi kana chus l'terhat. Maybe when you cooked everything, the opening of the kana was out of the pot, and all the dam from the lung, from the liver, from the heart was able to be extracted right through the kana. So you don't say that it's going to go into the water of the pot and it's going to permeate the membranes around the liver, around the heart, around the lung, and the dam will get into each other. No, the dam will come right out through the kana up on top. As Rashi says, v'simpune akave, the bronchial tubes of the lungs, shoychin derech kana hakave. Sorry, v'simpune akave, the arteries of the liver, shoychin spill their dam derech kana hakave through the artery of the liver, l'soich kala hagadol shareya, it'll throw its blood into the bronchial tubes of the lungs. The dam derech halal chutz l'teira. The dam will leave easily by going out through the bronchial tubes, through the kana, and never made its way to the pot. So therefore, you don't have a raya from there. Dilma pikana chutz l'teira, or inami michlit have a cholet lemeikar. Maybe it was plunged into boiling hot water. And what that has the effect is that seals in any dam in each organ that will never let it out. And that's why we don't need to be concerned there. But we still have this shaila of Abaye that if I cooked this liver with another piece of meat, will it aser the other piece of meat? He would put the meat into or he would take the liver and he would plunge it into boiling hot water, which would seal everything in. And once he did that, he had no problem cooking the with other meat. So once again, you don't have a raya. So Rav Huna used to do this, plunge it into boiling hot vinegar. He would plunge it into boiling hot water. Now, once you plunge it in, it seals the blood in. But Rav Papa held that the vinegar itself that you plunged it in, even though it had the effect of sealing the blood into the piece of liver, nevertheless the vinegar itself would be usher because of blood that got into the vinegar itself. Amalei, Rava told Rav Papa that's not logical at all. Because Hichala usher, once you're going to tell me that dam does escape, even though it's plunged into the boiling hot vinegar, then iu nami usher. Then the liver itself should become usher. Because the same way it's pilot, it's going to be berleya from it, and then and vibalt, you plunged it in. Normally, you say the liver is busy being pilot, but if you plunged it into the vinegar, it seals, it's not being pilot anymore. So then it's going to be berleya its own dam, and it would be a problem. So it must be that the vinegar itself does not have any dam in it. Okay, I think we should stop here. I don't want to finish all of tomorrow's daf. So we'll stop here, and Bez Hashem will be mamshich tomorrow.